Time for an offseason check-in on the 49ers rivals. NFC West. How did the NFC West do? Draft, free agency. How do these teams look heading into 2024? Who are the threats to the 49ers NFC West crown? Coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Crocky209. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love our everydayers. Love it when you subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you are listening to this podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Terms apply. NFC West, Croc, we're so focused on the 49ers. What are they doing in the offseason? NFL draft, breaking down prospects. There's teams out there trying to take down the San Francisco 49ers and new cover athlete for Madden 25, Christian McCaffrey. And these teams are gunning for the Niners. Niners are at the top, and the teams are coming for them. Let's start with the Seattle Seahawks, Croc, because they have been the biggest nemesis for the 49ers in recent history in the NFC West, even though the Rams are the most recent winners of the Super Bowl in the division. The 49ers are the least recent winners of the Super Bowl in the division, right? Or is it, wait, Cardinals? Did the Cardinals win it or did they not win it?
I think the Rams won it. So is it 49ers, Rams?
I know the Seahawks have won. But did the Cardinals ever win?
No.
They didn't? No, okay.
Maybe not going back to like Carson Palmer when they went to the title. Which is, we kind of forget. Like they did go to, not even, was it Kurt Warner? Not even Carson Palmer. Or did Carson Palmer take him deep?
I was thinking the Warner, the Cardinals lost the Super Bowl. Right, but they never won.
So maybe they lost the Super Bowl with Warner and went to a conference championship with Carson Palmer.
Yeah.
Why am I thinking Carson Palmer? I got it. Now I got to look this up.
I'm looking it up.
I'm pretty sure the chat's going to be like, no, I won't even look it up. But I feel like Carson Palmer, like there was one good year. Like really good.
There were some good times with Carson Palmer. It was the 2009 Cardinals team, though, that went to the Super Bowl, lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's the only Super Bowl appearance ever by the Cardinals.
They lost to the Packers, I think, no. There's a conference championship in there. I mean, they didn't win it, but they played in one with Carson Palmer. I'm like pretty sure.
Bottom line is there's one team in the West that has not won since the 49ers have won, and it is the Cardinals. But the Seattle Seahawks have a new regime in town. Pete Carroll's gone, Croc. And I don't think we should understate how different the Seattle Seahawks could potentially look, especially on offense. This is a team that had an old school coach that didn't run a lot of plays, didn't throw the ball a lot, ground first attack, right? I think it's going to change. They brought in Washington's offensive coordinator. They're going to air it out. They're going to have 3 wide receivers on the field a lot. They're going to run faster. They're going to run a lot more plays. This is a Seattle Seahawks team that, while we know some of the personnel that's there, I think it's going to start looking a lot different in 2024. What are your thoughts on the team that the Seattle Seahawks have built now under new coach Mike Macdonald?
Real quick, Carson Palmer did go. In 2015, they lost to the Carolina Panthers. Panthers went to the Super Bowl, lost to the Denver Broncos. 2015. Okay. I knew I wasn't tripping, man. There was a year where they were like good.
Yeah.
Random. But as far as Seattle Seahawks go, every single year for the last, I don't know, since 2011, 2012, really 2012 when Russell Wilson took over, it always felt like the Seahawks were automatically going to be in the mix. They were very well coached. They had Pete Carroll. You knew he was going to get his guys ready for a stretch of years. They really owned the San Francisco 49ers. And you look at them now, and I'm not sure exactly what to expect, but I do know one thing. They do have an abundance of young talent. They got guys trying to turn that curve. Now, one of those guys I thought would be a big part of it was Tariq Woolen. Not quite sure. He was benched by the last regime, had his ups and downs after having a stellar rookie year, like a rookie year that rivaled like Sauce Gardner. It's like, oh, who had the better rookie year? Tariq Woolen, who had a bunch of interceptions, or Sauce Gardner? Well, now there is no comparison between those two guys. And will Woolen try to rebound from a really bad sophomore campaign? But aside from him, there's a lot of young players they've been building off of. I'm really curious to see what Boye Mafe does heading into this year, a guy out of Minnesota. You see what they're kind of do at offense, still a lot of questionable decisions at the quarterback position. What will Geno Smith do? And I think that's what it kind of comes down to, because they have the weapons. You got DK, you got Jackson Smith-Njigba, you got Tyler Lockett, you got the running backs. I like what they're doing with they got number 9, blanking on his name, Michigan State.
Ken Walker.
All right, then they got Zach Charbonnet as well. So I want to say they drafted another running back. I like what they're doing there. The weapons are there. They've been trying to build the offensive line, but it's going to come down to how good is Geno Smith? Can he be better than some of the other quarterbacks in the division to really catapult that offense to another level? Not sure he could do that with the quarterbacks in the NFC West. And then that defense really taking that next step, which that's what they're banking on, bringing in a defensive coordinator to this team.
The personnel is good in Seattle. Personnel-wise, the Seahawks have the second best team in the NFC West after the 49ers. You go through that offense, you talked about the three-headed monster they have at wide receiver, and look out for Jackson Smith-Njigba, that year 2 bump. He was the best wide receiver in the draft last year. They took him in the first round, and they're going to have 3 wide receivers on the field more. So you're not a backup anymore if you're Jackson Smith-Njigba. You're going to be on the field all the time, even if you're in the slot with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. They're going to run more plays. They're going to sling it a little bit. So we'll see how Geno Smith. I think it puts more on Geno Smith's shoulders, because they're going to throw more, and they're not going to be run first, and then now you can play off of that. So is he up for that challenge? So that'll be interesting. You got the receivers. You mentioned the running backs. I think Kenny McIntosh out of Georgia was the other running back you were thinking of that was drafted in 2023 after they drafted Zach Charbonnet already. Noah Fant, a tight end. But their offensive line was really banged up last year, and so that's going to be healthy. You got the first rounder in Charles Cross from the 2022 draft, top 10 pick. Our old buddy Laken Tomlinson, now the left guard there, free agent addition from the Jets. You got Oluwatimi at center. You got Abraham Lucas, the third rounder, who's banged up a little bit.
That's going to be a big one right there, Abraham Lucas, because he was a guy who played well at tackle his rookie year. And then there was kind of like, not sure what to think about him right now. So how well does he rebound from that? Like, whether it's being banged up, injuries, whatever the case is, can he now kind of get back to how they originally felt about him? Because I felt like coming into the NFL, it was like, oh man, is the right tackle better than the left tackle? The guy you got in the third round better than your top 10 pick? Now it feels like it's more, and Seattle fans, I'm pretty sure they'll flood the comments and let us know. Feels like, nope, Cross is the guy. Abraham Lucas maybe took a step back. Can he get back to how he was playing originally, where he was playing very well as a rookie?
Yeah, sophomore slumps for Abraham Lucas and Tariq Woolen last year for the Seahawks. And then they drafted a third-round guard, Christian Haynes, who's probably going to jump into the starting role very early in his career. So, they're building a pretty good offensive line. They're rock solid across the board on the offensive side of the ball there for Ryan Grubb's new scheme coming in, the former offensive coordinator for the Washington Huskies. So that'll be interesting how that looks. And then obviously Mike McDonald bringing in a rock-solid scheme from the Baltimore Ravens on defense. And Devin, probably a lot more man coverage, right? This isn't going to be the cover 3, which is why, Rick Woolen was kind of that cover 3 lengthy guy. I wonder how he's going to work with the new scheme. Devin Witherspoon's going to be fine in this scheme. I think he's a star in the making at corner for the Seahawks.
Real quick on Woolen, because you talked about him being the cover 3 corner, and I think that Seattle 3 scheme, we heard a lot about that with Richard Sherman, but it's more than just like a deep third for 3, by the book. That's what we're doing, like a sky cover 3. It's a more of a match type cover 3, where you have a lot of responsibility on vertical or outbreaking routes from the line of scrimmage on. So that's why a lot of times they like those, longer, rangier corners, because, hey, we just need you to be disruptive at the line of scrimmage, and then you run with everything vertically, pushing to the outside. If you get a slant right now, you get to fall off of that. And if you bring a new scheme in for a guy who's 6'4", who is really specific to that kind of scheme, helped Richard Sherman a lot, and he just mastered it to the next level. a new scheme can change really how you view Tariq Woolen altogether.
So some question marks in the secondary. Witherspoon's I think he's gonna be awesome for them. You got Michael Jackson there as well at corner, Kobe Bryant at corner. They drafted DJ James in the 6th round this year. They drafted Nehemiah Pritchett in the 5th round. 2 very different guys there. A lot of speed though at corner. I think they're going to run a lot more of that man like they did in Baltimore. Show you some looks with the pass rush, Julian Love and Rashawn Jenkins at safety. Then you go to the linebacker group with Jerome Baker and Tyrell Dotson. They drafted a 4th round linebacker, Tyrese Knight. That's not the greatest group. So back 7, some questions, but some guys that could potentially step up. And then some, I think the strength is going to be in their defensive line. Leonard Williams, they drafted a 1st round Byron Murphy to play inside. Draymond Jones and Deron Reed already there inside.
Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy together?
Well, think about this size because you got Draymond Jones and Jaron Reed too. All like they could roll out there with a beefy front 4. Jonathan Hankins as well is still kicking around the league. The outside pass rush is the question because none of those guys are like, we're going to beat you around the edge. They've got Boye Mafe, 2nd rounder from a couple of years ago that's kind of making strides. Uchenna Nwosu as well, those kind of outside off-ball rushers. And so we'll see how that ends up looking with more of a odd front look for this team and how Byron Murphy fits into that as a 3 tech in that front. So sort of a variable front, I think, with what Mike McDonald's going to throw out there with looks on the defensive line. So I think they'll be good against a run. The outside pass rush is my question, how that comes together with that new look. But I mean, man, the Ravens have always had a way to find players that can rush the passer, and it'll be interesting to see how that takes form with this squad in Seattle. I think it might make or break actually how their season goes and how quickly it all comes together. But even with some questions in the back 7, I think this is a really good football team, 2nd best team on paper in the NFC West. How do the other teams stack up though, Croc? Let's talk a little Rams, talk a little Cardinals, whose stock is definitely up as well next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Gametime. When you download the Gametime app, you get a little special offer for our Locked On listeners. And Gametime makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier because prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. We're talking killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets or buying Major League Baseball tickets. I got some tickets to the Giants game last minute for $11 the other day. Phenomenal. You see the view from your seat on your on the app on your phone, and you move the phone around, and it's just like you were at the game taking a picture with your camera. You see exactly what it looks like. And of course, everyone hates the fees. When you think a ticket price is one price and you go see those hidden fees at checkout, no surprise fees at checkout with Gametime. So take the guesswork out of buying all the tickets you need, concerts, comedy shows, theater events, sports, whatever it is near you with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Aaron Donald retired. By the way, did you see the Rams Twitter account threw out a fake Madden cover with Aaron Donald instead of Christian McCaffrey? And they're like, we think this one looks better or something like that. I was like, oh, come on, dude. Come on, you're reaching. The guy doesn't even play football anymore. You're trying to throw him out there. He never gave Aaron Donald, for how great he was. Niners did an amazing job against Aaron Donald. He was never that much of a problem. I think some points in his career he was more of a problem than he was when Dan Brunskill was out there. But later years, Niners did a really good job blocking up Aaron Donald, and he's gone. So how much did he make?
Daniel Brunskill, there was one game I just remember vividly. 4 sacks from Aaron Donald. And I'm just like, they just cannot block this guy. He's the best defensive player I've ever seen in my life. But so that was pre-Daniel Brunskill, though. It
was the pre-Brunskill era. Yeah.
Brunskill definitely the boogeyman for.
And how much of what they had going on defense was about what we talk a lot about the 49ers offensive line. It's like, okay, if you take a Hall of Fame left tackle out of the equation like Trent Williams? How much does he allow you to do everything else you need to do on the offensive line, right? And how much does he make everybody else play up because you can help other places you don't need to help there? And I think similarly, taking Aaron Donald out of that defensive line and the defense as a whole, how important was he to how everybody else played on that defense? And how big is that loss going to be? Is it more than just losing the impact of one player? Are you making everybody else worse on defense? So that's a huge question I have for the Los Angeles Rams on the defensive side of the ball, losing a Hall of Fame player, a player that was the best defensive player in the NFL during his career. But they tried to replace him in the draft with their first 2 picks. They even traded up for their guy at defensive tackle in Braden Fisk to try to bring him in along with Jared Verse, both Florida State guys. And I saw this post-draft thing where they showed the video of them working the phones and trying to trade up and getting Braden Fisk and getting the college teammates together on the defensive line and talking about how you don't replace Aaron Donald with one guy, you replace him with 2 guys. Well, it's like you can't run 12 guys out there. You still have 11 guys on the field, right? So Jared Verse and Braden Fisk, they're going to pair with last year's phenomenal rookie 3rd rounder Kobe Turner on the defensive line. I don't know. Does this defense worry you? We're talking about guys like Christian Roseboom, Ernest Jones, the 4th. You had Byron Young, the speedy edge rusher out of Tennessee, had a nice little rookie year, another 3rd rounder from that really good draft class they had actually last year for the Rams. You got Cam Curl brought in at strong safety. You got Russ Yeast at free safety. You got Tre'Davious White that they brought in from Buffalo on one corner, Darius Williams on the other corner. It's still a kind of a no-name defense. A couple more higher draft picks now the last couple of years since they actually have picks. Their first-round pick and Jared Verse since Jared Goff in 2016 on that defense. But, like, this is a defense that I don't think is going to create a lot of problems for the San Francisco 49ers, Croc.
There are a couple names that jump right out. And you talked about some of the young guys, especially a guy like, Byron Young. They got some guys that can move around a little bit. I didn't like Braden Fisk, and this kind of reminds me a little bit of like 49ers drafted Solomon Thomas, and then they double back and they drafted Reuben Foster. And I remember not liking the Solomon Thomas pick, but then when I saw they got Reuben Foster, I'm like, okay, I kind of like grabbing those 2 guys as opposed to just thinking, oh man, you're trying to fix the defense with just Solomon Thomas. So Braden Fisk, not my favorite pick, but then when you go Jared Verse, Verse is a guy that no matter what Florida State film you put on, you notice number 5, So that's a guy who is like, okay, 49ers, you're going to have to pay a little bit of attention to him. Obviously, 49ers have terrific left tackle. Right tackle, we'll figure out what that is. But I like what they did there. But the secondary, I remember looking at the secondary last year and thinking, who the hell are these guys in the Rams secondary? And now they've added a couple of names. Tre'Davious White, he has to be healthy. Like, that's a big part of it. How healthy can White be? If he is healthy, he's a guy who is a legit starting cornerback. And then Cam Curl. I've grown to like Cameron Curl. This is a guy, I watched him in college a lot. And adding him from Washington, I think that could be a really good pickup. I like his versatility. So there are a couple guys there who I feel like I see what they're trying to do to build to make the defense better. Is the defense good enough to stop a 49ers offense? Probably not without Aaron Donald. And then you turn to their offense and the guys that they have on that side. And when you think of if Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp and Kyron Williams play the whole season healthy with a healthy Matthew Stafford, that's a lot. You're asking for a lot of healthy things to fall in place. But I think that's where they're kind of make their bread and butter. Can their offense, which is a really good offense, it's stacked. And I believe, let me look at the roster real quick. I think they added a running back as well in the draft. Yep, Blake Corum. All right, so
yeah.
You add another running back. They are saying, all right, defense, we added some pieces. Can the offense be good enough to slow some things down for you guys? And I think we saw the 49ers maybe take that philosophy a little bit last season. Defense wasn't just as stout, but when you look at the numbers, 49ers defense is terrific on paper. Well, the offense, I think, had a lot to do with that. I think the Rams are trying to replicate what the 49ers did last year and say, all right, hey, Matthew Stafford, you're the guy. CJ Stroud thinks that you're one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. You got to go out there and be that guy this year with these weapons, these offense. Can we be healthy? I think that's when the Rams are scary, and maybe even scarier than a Seattle Seahawks team.
And by the way, not just losing Aaron Donald, they lost their defensive coordinator as well. Raheem Morris goes on to be head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. He took the offensive coordinator, Zach Robinson, and we know that Sean McVay coordinates the offense, but Zach Robinson gone as well. Do you know who the new offensive coordinator is for the Los Angeles Rams, Croc?
I wanted to say Greg Roman, but I know he joined the Los Angeles Chargers, the other LA team.
Back with Harbaugh and the Chargers. No, it's our old guy, Mike LaFleur, Matt LaFleur's little brother. So some 49ers lineage there. And then the new defensive coordinator is Chris Shula. So some famous last names there on this staff for the Los Angeles Rams. Younger versions of those famous last names. And obviously we know the offense is all Sean McVay. So, I mean, this team is kind of teetering right now because while they have talent in Kupp and Puka Nacua, I think a big part of why those guys are so good is how the offense is run and having a quarterback like Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford has had arm troubles. You know, if there's any,
I thought he was down last year though. Right when he started having the elbow injury, it's like, oh, it's over. And then all of a sudden he said, "Surprise, I'm back!" And then he starts playing at an elite level down the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, when he's on and healthy, he's still the best quarterback in the division. How long is he going to stay healthy? And if there's starts to be some cracks in that health and in his arm, this team could really fall apart. I think, and I think they'll be good on offense because they've got Sean McVay and they've got Matthew Stafford, but they don't scare me. Kyron Williams and Blake Corum, and they've got a makeshift offensive line that they've tried to add pieces to in recent years. They'll be okay there, but this is a team clearly on paper that is not as good as the Seattle Seahawks, and Croc might not be as good as the next team we're going to talk about, the Arizona Cardinals. Let's rank these teams next as far as who's the biggest threat to the 49ers. Let's talk Cardinals because they started out with the worst roster, but they're on the come up. They are stock up right now after 2 big-time drafts and a new regime there in Arizona. Let's get into it next.
Peacock, I can't let you off the hook. You just said something, and I was itching to ask you.
Okay.
You talked about a guy, Matthew Stafford, being healthy, best quarterback in the division. I think some 49ers fans may take offense to that. So Are you telling me right now, if I could guarantee, and this is big time hypothetical, but if I could say, all right, I guarantee you, Peacock, Matthew Stafford healthy for the entire season, are you taking him over Brock Purdy, what you saw Brock Purdy do last season?
Brock Purdy's been phenomenal. I would take Matthew Stafford, guaranteed full health, over Brock Purdy still. And we'll see if at some point Brock Purdy passes him up and maybe 2024 is the year. But from what I've seen from their careers, Matthew Stafford's a pretty rare dude.
So what is it about Matthew Stafford that you feel is better? Because, again, from the metrics, and, again, I'm arguing for the fan base right now.
Yeah.
When you look at the metrics, when you look at the numbers, it doesn't get better than the production that you've gotten out of Brock Purdy. So what about Matthew Stafford when you're watching him? Do you say, you know what? I because of these things, I would take this over what I've seen from Brock Purdy?
I think for Stafford, well, first of all, he's been around the league a lot longer. So he's a veteran and he runs the offense just as it needs to be run. All the great things that Brock Purdy can do in an offense and be efficient, get the ball out where it needs to be, when it needs to be, and all those things, and have control of the offense. Stafford can do all those, but he's just more physically gifted than Brock Purdy. He can put balls in places that Brock Purdy can't. And even still, he doesn't have maybe the cannon he had when he was throwing to Calvin Johnson, but he can make some special throws, and he might even be a better pure quarterback than he was in those days throwing to Calvin Johnson, because he plays more of a veteran game than more of the gunslinger game that he used to play.
Do you think that, and hypothetical, can't do anything about it, but if you swap out, especially with how Stafford played down the stretch, if you swap out Purdy for Stafford, do the 49ers have a Super Bowl trophy?
It's hard to say. The 49ers were so close that the margins were so thin that, if McCaffrey doesn't fumble, the 49ers win the Super Bowl, maybe. If one penalty from Trent Williams on that second drive, maybe the 49ers win the Super Bowl.
Or maybe one throw from a quarterback, right?
Yeah,
or maybe one play, that one play that you're thinking when you're thinking of Purdy and experience. And these are the things now that may just come in time with Purdy, seeing things beforehand, so being a little bit more prepared with how he would handle it, and maybe that's something that would take him. I think because of how well he has played, I think we put him in the same category as some of the great quarterbacks in the league right now, but there's still a lot that he hasn't seen, and he's still working to really take that next step. So that's very understandable.
Yeah, I would put that I would say if you swapped out Stafford for Purdy, I would put the impact of that in the Super Bowl, because Purdy I thought was good in the Super Bowl. He was awesome. And people got mad at me because I was like, the difference, it's too simple to say Mahomes was better than Purdy. That's what won the Super Bowl. Purdy was good, right? So I would take McCaffrey's fumble away first before I would trade Stafford for Purdy. If you said, hey, you have to do one thing to change the Super Bowl and the Niners win the Super Bowl, I'd say the ball bounces back to McCaffrey. I would take that trade over saying I'll trade Purdy for Stafford, because I don't think the upgrade in quarterback play was needed for the 49ers to win the Super Bowl. These needed not to muff a punt, not to fumble, right? To make one more play, not to botch a protection. And changing quarterbacks doesn't change any of those things.
What changes things for the Arizona Cardinals? Because this is a team with Kyler Murray who I continue to just feel like, you just watch him. You watch him, it's a little erratic. But if you really watch him, maybe with those like rose-colored lenses, you start to see somebody like, man, there's so much talent there. There's so much ability, just arm talent. Like he could just flick the ball and he could do certain things that are really special. He can make plays with his legs. But there's something clearly off. Aside from the injuries, there's something off. And I think I know what it is. I think this is a guy that just we've heard the reports. He'd rather play video games than study his playbook. And anytime a team has to put in your contract that you have to watch 4 hours of film per week, 4 hours? Like, come on, man. That's not much. So I think that's what's missing. But what do you think when you look at these Arizona Cardinals and how they potentially can be a threat to the 49ers? They have challenged the 49ers at different times, but how is Kyler Murray going to do it first and foremost?
Kyler Murray was good last year when he came back. He showed up in November. He played the second half of the season, and he was really good. His worst game, I think, was against the Niners, maybe. He threw 2 interceptions in that game. Aside from that, he was like 9 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. He was completing over 65% of his passes. He was throwing consistently 250+ yards per game. Like it looked good, and he wasn't throwing to a bunch of superstar wide receivers. They didn't have as much in the cupboard as the 49ers do. And so, the talent has always been there. Does he care enough is the question. And maybe there's some maturing that he's needed to do throughout his career. And maybe now he's going to be a better quarterback than he has been in the past because of that maturity potentially. But, it's really hard to say. But talent-wise, he's phenomenal, and he looked good. And so that's why this team worries me in Arizona, because I think they've made huge strides. Monty Austin-Fort, I gave on Peacock and Williamson, we graded every single draft in the NFL. The Arizona Cardinals got one of the few A's for me for their draft. They've put together 2 phenomenal drafts in a row. Jonathan Gannon looked like a goober at first when they hired him. It was like, I don't know what they did. I don't know why they hired this guy. He actually might have been a pretty good hire for them. And so if he gets the defense going in the right direction, you add potentially a star wide receiver now with Marvin Harrison to go with the sleeper from last year and Michael Wilson at wide receiver. Greg Dortch is a player I like a lot, underrated. They got Zay Jones in there now in that group of wide receivers, putting together a good offensive line. And they added Jonah Williams there. Trey McBride came into his own as a tight end last year. They got Trey Benson, who's a speed addition to the backfield to go with James Conner, who's the power guy who they already have in place. I like what they're doing on offense. And then on defense, they still have some work to do. But, they added Darius Robinson, who's a guy we liked for the 49ers potentially at the end of round 1. They drafted him in the first round. Max Melton at corner is a guy we like for the Niners in the second round at corner that the Arizona Cardinals drafted. They've put together 2 really good drafts and are building something there. And they might not be ready for prime time yet, but it's certainly going in the right direction.
They even moved Zaven Collins to like this I think they're going to like more of a 4-3 defense, and he's their defensive end. Zayvon Collins was like this huge linebacker, which when you look at him, he looks like the same size of Fred Warner, I would say.
260 pounds, I think.
But then he's like 260. So this is a guy that there's like, all right. And because of moves like that, and I'm not just completely writing them off, I like what they've done in the sense of kind of maybe adding some weapons. You got Marvin Harrison Jr. I like the running back, James Conner. They're trying to build around their quarterback there. But I think there's just too many question marks on defense. And I think the more that you put on Kyler Murray, the more this is bound to unwind. Because I don't think he's that guy. I think Kyler Murray needs to be in an offense like the 49ers. And I'm not saying he would do what Purdy has done from an efficiency standpoint, but just in the sense of you don't have to be the guy. I just saw this comment from the quarterback, second-year guy from Florida Gators.
Anthony Richardson?
Richardson.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, the NFL is easier than college. And a lot of people are going to assume, without reading the full or hearing his full quote, they're going to assume that he's saying the NFL is easier because, oh, I'm just so talented and this game is slower or whatever. No, that's not what he said. He was like, nah, the NFL is easier for him because he doesn't have to do everything. Hey, man, I got these running backs. I got these receivers, Pittman and guys. I got this offensive line. Everybody's hungry. Everybody's working really hard. Hey, man, it makes my job a lot easier. I don't have to be the guy and play hero ball every down like I had to in college. And when you look at Kyler Murray, it feels like there's going to be just this element of him playing hero ball. 49ers don't have that. Like Brock Purdy will probably tell you, oh, yeah, the NFL is easier than college. Yeah, why? Because that damn Iowa State, he had so much on his shoulders. He doesn't have to be that guy. Hey, I got Debo, I got Ayuk, I got CMC, I got Kittle, I got, Trent Williams protecting my blind side. I have an offensive coordinator. Man, this is a lot more chill than college. I just have to kind of read the field well, make the right decisions, and everything is kind of, not saying it's easy, but it's just easier than having to be the guy at Iowa State. I think Kyler Murray right now, he's still at Iowa State. Like there's still so much that's put on them. So until they are able to scale back from the defense to continue to build the offense, I think they're going to continue to be in trouble.
Disrespectful quote by Anthony Richardson about his former Florida wide receiver, Ricky Pearsall, if he likes what he's got in the NFL that much more. Come on.
I think he was just saying as a whole, college, especially now, this is the NIL era. A lot of guys are kind of playing for themselves and doing things to where, hey, how can I capitalize off of this? How can I build this brand? And I'm worried about these NIL meetings as opposed to really being the best version of you can be on the field. And the NFL players, they're not just playing for themselves. They're playing for their families, their kids, their wives, right? Brock Purdy just got married. He's playing for his wife now. These guys, there's so much more that they're playing for that they are just working harder. And I'm maybe not, I don't want to say not the top guys that are drafted high. They have a different kind of money, but there are a lot of guys that are making good money, but is it life-changing money? No. So like the NFL is their job. It's their job in the sense of I have to stay in the league. I got to get another contract.
Yeah, to get that life-changing money. Yeah, I could see that, especially for a quarterback, the level of professionalism in the NFL where everybody's in the place you need them to be for your job to be easier and make that work, and how much more difficult it might be for a young quarterback who's on a bad team where his players aren't in the positions they need to be, and it's not a well-coached team, and how difficult that might be. And so I think that does make a huge difference, what's around you, how you're coached, how your team prepares, if guys are in the right places, if guys are blocking for you, and if receivers are in the right spot, and it makes your life a lot easier. So I absolutely see where Anthony Richardson's coming from.
They're going to kill him though, because they're not going to read the whole quote. They're just going to say, see, Anthony Richardson said the NFL is easier than college. And I remember the first thing that came to my mind before watching what he said was Justin Fields. He came in, it's much slower. And then all of a sudden, we've seen how that turned out. But that's not what Richardson was saying at all.
Fields needed to hurry his process up. Come on, dude. It's been 3 years. Can you hurry it up? Get your damn feet planted and throw the football. Get it out on time. So the order I put him in, Croc, was my order. Seattle, 2. I mean, everyone's fighting for second place. Let's be honest here. Seattle 2, Rams 3, Cardinals 4. The Cardinals, though, I think they could arrive quickly. Some things need to go right for them. And if you told me that Stafford, plays less than 14, 15 games for them, I might put the Rams 4th. And then I still don't know what it's going to look like with the new coaching staff for Seattle. So there might be some growing pains there. So those 3 teams are actually pretty close for me.
I got the Rams 2nd all day. And I think this is a team I just have, like I have for Pete Carroll, I have so much respect for Sean McVay and his ability to, just coach his team up. And I have to assume, because right now everyone is healthy, so I have to assume that Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford, Kyron Williams, those guys are going to be healthy for the entirety of a season. And if that's the case, that's going to be a very difficult team to deal with.
Yeah, the offense could carry them for sure. And I always say it, man, that marriage of coach and quarterback, if you've got that figured out, that helps a lot. And the Rams have that right now with McVay and Matthew Stafford. As long as Stafford's arm's holding on. That's the NFC West. Let us know what you guys think at BD Peacock, at Crocky209. Drop a comment on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe while you're there. And, of course, you can subscribe everywhere you are listening to this podcast. Croc and I back tomorrow right here. Locked On 49ers.